Russia is shaking from its political arena to its economy, and at the eye of this storm is Putin's right-hand man for many years, Mikhail Kasyanov. From his position as Prime Minister to becoming the Kremlin's most dangerous enemy, he calls for building a Russia without Putin, more democratic, more transparent, and freed from the vicious cycle of dictatorship, war, repression. Former Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Kasyanov calls for building Russia without Putin. Mikhail Kasyanov served as Russia's Prime Minister from 2000 to 2004, belonging to Putin's first inner circle of power elites. But deep disagreements over the country's development direction and economic policies led him to leave the Kremlin. Unlike most Russian officials who chose silence, Kasyanov decided to take the path of opposition and quickly became the strongest voice among those who once served Putin. After leaving office, he joined the democratic movement, co-founding the People's Freedom Party, Parnas, with Boris Nemtsov, fighting against corruption and demanding genuine rule of law. Not shying away from risks, Kasyanov continuously appeared at dissenters' march rallies, international forums, and various opposition events despite facing threats, repression, and the risk of arrest. He openly criticized the vertical of power model, a system concentrating all authority in the president's hands and KGB-style security forces, causing Russia to fall into a state of perpetual lawlessness. When Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Kasyanov became one of the strongest voices of opposition from former high-ranking officials. He participated in establishing the Russian Anti-War Committee, gathering intellectuals, journalists, business people, and exiled activists, aiming to create an international forum calling for the country's de-Putinization. Kasyanov accused Putin of dragging Russia into an illegal war, devastating the nation's future, and affirmed that only deep democratic reforms could save Russia from the vicious cycle of dictatorship, war, repression. This stance made him the biggest thorn in the Kremlin's side. In October 2025, Moscow launched an unprecedented hardline move. Mikhail Kasyanov was added to the federal list for terrorists and extremists. This decision immediately triggered a series of internal punitive measures. All Russian banks were forced to freeze his assets. All financial services and related activities were banned. All media and political content was tightened. Also listed were economist Sergei Guriev and editor-in-chief Kirill Martynov, all labeled foreign agents, living in exile and having criminal files opened by the FSB. The fact that a former prime minister, once a key figure under Putin, was labeled a terrorist is unprecedented, exposing the Kremlin's level of concern about the international influence and opposition network that Kasyanov is leading. He doesn't just oppose, but understands Russia's internal power dynamics better than anyone in the opposition. Kasyanov has three factors that make the Kremlin fearful: deep understanding of Putin-era power structures, international credibility and easy mobilization of Western support, ability to unite scattered anti-war groups. Despite being listed as extremist, despite Parnas being disbanded and potentially facing arrest if he returns home, Kasyanov continues his campaign from abroad. He calls on the opposition to unite to build a roadmap for democratic reconstruction after Putin and continuously exposes Russia's current governance system based on fear and political violence. For him, the only future for Russia to escape the spiral of chaos is a long-term de-Putinization process, supported and monitored by the free world. In this tension-filled political context, domestic repression continues to intensify. In Tula province, the FSB just arrested a 32-year-old man, accusing him of treason for allegedly transferring cryptocurrency to Ukrainian forces. He faces the maximum sentence under Article 275, life imprisonment. The FSB provided no evidence, stated no amount, and explained nothing about how they discovered the transaction. The case shows the panic mentality and extreme repressive attitude spreading throughout the security apparatus. While politics are unstable, Russia's economy is even more dismal. At the Dubai Exhibition 2025, Rostec CEO Sergei Chemezov first admitted what experts have long been saying: Russian arms exports have halved compared to 2022. Before the war, Russia earned about $14 billion annually, ranking second globally after the US. But now, most weapons must be prioritized for the Ukrainian battlefield due to depleted reserves. Chemezov stated bluntly, "We are forced to supply our own military first." This is a rare confirmation of the actual shortage situation in Russia's defense industry. International statistics show the reality is even worse. Jamestown Foundation. Russia exported only about $1 billion last year, a 92% drop from 2021. CIPRI. Russian exports fell 47% from 2022 to 2024 and 64% over 5 years. Even the Su-57 fighter jet, heavily advertised, only produces 2 to 4 units per year, hasn't reached 5th-generation standards, and has no real customers. This shows Russia is falling from its position as an arms export superpower, one of the sectors that once brought in the regime's largest foreign currency earnings. Due to this dire economic situation, millions of Russian workers have to go to work but receive no wages for months on end. According to official statistics, total wage arrears have quadrupled in just 1 year, reaching nearly 2 billion rubles. From construction sites and mining operations to strategic defense factories, delayed wage payments are spreading, exposing an economy drained of money, orders, and payment capacity. At the Kingisepp Mechanical Plant, KMZ, a facility fulfilling contracts for the Russian Navy and National Guard, the situation has fallen into serious crisis. We haven't received salaries for 3 months. Nobody knows when the money will come. Some have families, some have bank loans to repay. Now there's nothing left to live on, a foreman shared. A service engineer confirmed he hasn't received bonuses, which make up most of his income, since August. Meanwhile, the plant has been laying off staff en masse, but those who quit still haven't received their final pay. It's estimated that KMZ owes at least 300 million rubles. According to Rosstat, 44% of total wage debt is in the construction sector, an industry once considered the driving force of Russia's infrastructure development. But this year's reality: construction workers on the M12 highway in Bashkortostan haven't been paid. The campus project in Oryol has had wage delays for months. The Krasnoyarsk metro is stalled. Residential construction in Nizhnevartovsk faces similar situations. At the nuclear reactor construction site in Ulyanovsk, 300 workers went on strike. Many filed resignations fearing company bankruptcy, saying they no longer see any future. The mining sector accounts for 17.5% of national wage debt. Most notable is the layoff of over 500 miners at a large coal mine in Kemerovo. This was once a priority industry, but has now become a symbol of the economic exhaustion in industrial regions. Russian soldier calls home. I will stay and fight for Ukraine. Shocking revelation exposes the true nature of Putin's war. A video circulated on November 18th on the Butusov Plus channel exposed a shocking truth. Ruslan Dmitriev, a 21-year-old soldier from Voronezh, after being captured by Ukraine, called his mother. But instead of asking to return to Russia, he calmly announced his decision to stay and fight for Ukraine. In the call, Dmitriev described the Russian army as a meat grinder, where soldiers are thrown to the front lines with no regard for their survival. He affirmed that in Ukrainian captivity, he was treated decently and cared for properly, completely opposite to what he had experienced. When his mother heard her son would not return to Russia, she didn't ask about his condition, but immediately worried about the desertion charges he would face and hinted at the compensation money the family would lose if he didn't return. When Dmitriev asked, "What's more important, my life or that money?" she coldly replied that money was more important. That brief conversation exposed 2 painful issues: the desperation of Russian soldiers pushed into battle as sacrificial pawns, and the economic dependency that makes many Russian families view death compensation as vital income. Dmitriev became a rare case, publicly stating his desire to side with Ukraine, not just because of humane treatment, but because he wanted to escape his own country's cruel machinery. On the same day, November 18th, the independent observation platform Inform Napalm published another video, revealing the state of discipline collapse in the Russian army. 4 servicemen from the 2nd Battalion, 247th Airborne Assault Brigade, operating in the Zaporizhia direction, were assembled before dozens of comrades, forced to remove their outer clothing and made to crawl into a dirt pit as public punishment. According to Inform Napalm, this group of soldiers had previously refused to participate in a mission with high casualty risks. The public punishment, filmed by fellow soldiers, was seen as aimed at instilling fear, forcing soldiers into absolute obedience in high-risk missions. This is not an isolated case. Increasingly similar videos are appearing, showing Russian units are so stressed they must use humiliating measures to maintain discipline. The 247th Brigade is known for frequently being deployed to the hottest spots with low survival rates. This type of punishment reflects desperation and internal disintegration. Meanwhile, near Pokrovsk, Ukrainian forces quickly stopped a Russian mechanized assault. Several enemy armored vehicles got stuck right at the river crossing point, and when the fog lifted, the entire formation became perfect targets for FPV pilots and heavy bomb-carrying drones. According to reports from the 91st Independent Anti-Tank Battalion and the 1st Air Assault Combined Arms Brigade, Russia had been trying for days to advance under fog cover, moving in small groups to find gaps in Ukrainian defenses. Platoon Commander Nazar Trenner of the Rubak Attack UAV unit recounted that when the weather suddenly cleared, they saw Russian armored vehicles clearly standing still on a temporary bridge and immediately attacked. Footage from the scene showed one Russian tank destroyed and 2 BMP vehicles demolished. This strike paralyzed the entire assault. The Rubak unit fired first, targeting infantry, then shifting to mechanized vehicles. Simultaneously, scouts from the 91st Battalion discovered more Russian vehicles attempting to cross the river, immediately called in FPVs from neighboring units to lock targets and precisely destroy each one. After the FPV wave, heavy bomb-carrying drones were deployed to finish the battlefield, leaving large craters and scattered debris where the crossing bridge once stood. As long as each unit does its job properly, the enemy has no chance, the 91st Battalion affirmed. Trenner also emphasized that in fog, Russia is forced to rely heavily on infantry, but as soon as armored vehicles are exposed, they are eliminated immediately. Ukraine penetrates Russian air defense, strikes on S-400, BUK, and Tor nerve centers. The Ghost Special Operations Unit of Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate, HUR, just released video footage showing a series of extremely precise UAV strikes on Russian air defense systems in occupied Donetsk region. Over 2 weeks, they didn't attack randomly, but targeted high-value assets, from radars and command posts to short-range, medium-range, and long-range anti-aircraft missile systems, thereby creating dangerous gaps in Russia's layered air defense network. Footage shows Ukrainian UAVs hitting and destroying a Tor M1 system, the short-range defense layer designed to protect front lines against UAVs, aircraft, and precision-guided weapons. When Tor M1 was knocked out, Russia's low-altitude defense line was clearly breached, opening gaps for Ukrainian UAVs and strike munitions to penetrate deeper. The next target was the 55K6 command post, the mobile coordination center of the S-400 system. This is the brain connecting S-400 launchers and radars, enabling them to share data and coordinate in combat. The destruction of the command post paralyzed the entire S-400 cluster in the area regarding command, significantly reducing the ability to detect, classify, guide fire, and intercept aerial targets. The third strike targeted the radar station of the Buk M3 system, the component responsible for detecting and tracking targets. When the radar was destroyed, surrounding Buk batteries became essentially blind to medium-range targets, unable to lock targets precisely and unable to fully utilize combat effectiveness. Thus, in just one concentrated campaign, Ukraine successively hit 3 critical links: the Tor M1 short-range defense layer, the Buk M3 medium-range layer, radar component, the S-400 long-range command control layer, 55K6 station. Just as Russia is collapsing on multiple fronts, Igor Girkin, former FSB officer and ultra-hawk figure, recently sent a letter and gave an interview to RTVI channel, despite being imprisoned. From a prison specializing in detained security personnel, he continues to express extreme views on the war, warning that all tactical victories near Pokrovsk or other directions are meaningless if Russia doesn't dare pursue maximum objectives, completely defeating Ukraine and eliminating the current Ukrainian state. In a letter to friends, Girkin admitted being too harsh in attacking Putin and military campaign leadership, to the point that many letters were censored and never reached recipients. However, he emphasized the core issue. Recent offensive thrusts only create superficial victories because Russia lacks strategic reserves to turn them into lasting results. According to Girkin, this only changes if Moscow accepts a single strategy: completely destroy Ukraine's armed forces and eliminate the Ukrainian state as it currently exists. A true victory, according to him, must include eliminating current Ukraine, annexing most territory along the Curzon line into Russia, with the remainder divided between Poland, Romania, or even Hungary. Girkin believes all compromise possibilities are meaningless because relations between Russia and the West have completely rotted. The West has invested too much money, influence, and credibility in Ukraine, so cannot accept a result where Kiev fails. Conversely, according to him, Moscow's own hesitation and weakness caused the West to shift to an all-in approach, supporting Ukraine to the end to weaken Russia. Even if Russia captures all of Donbass, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, Gherkin still believes Ukraine will rearm, reorganize, and counterattack, with support from an alliance of nations ready to intervene. Even if Zelensky is forced from office, his successor will be even more anti-Russian, only temporarily accepting a Minsk-type agreement to buy time, then breaking it when enough strength is accumulated. Gherkin also points out that current Russian forces are insufficient to launch major campaigns to capture Kiev, Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kryvyi Rih, or control key cities like Kharkiv, Poltava, Sumy. Without significant troop increases, Russia will remain passive, continuing to receive UAVs and missiles flying all the way to the Urals without a definitive solution. Therefore, he concludes, without large-scale total mobilization, victory is impossible, and a ceasefire would only worsen the situation by giving Ukraine more time to accumulate strength. What draws observers' attention is not just the content, since Gherkin has repeatedly demanded total mobilization, but the fact that RTVI channel, considered to have ties to security agencies and influenced by pro-Putin factions, allowed him to speak. Gherkin is imprisoned in a facility specifically for former security personnel, and he himself was an FSB officer. The appearance of an extreme voice calling for war escalation on such a media channel suggests there may exist a power faction within Russia's security apparatus wanting to use Gherkin as a tool to promote hardline views, either full mobilization or prepare to accept long-term failure. Meanwhile, Putin is believed to not want total mobilization due to concerns about social, economic, and political consequences domestically. Russia is also uncertain whether mass mobilization would actually lead to victory or just prolong the war, push the economy deeper into crisis, and create social instability. Gherkin's appearance on security-friendly media may therefore be a sign of cracks within the power structure, one side wanting to escalate the war to a new level, the other still trying to maintain just enough fire to avoid the risk of domestic explosion. Russia's main offensive spearhead at Pokrovsk is collapsing into chaos as Russian drones mistakenly fire on Russian soldiers. Infantry units distrust UAV operators. Commanders force suicidal charges into meat grinders, while troops seek to desert to survive. Meanwhile, Ukraine dominates the skies, turning every route into a kill zone, causing Russia to suffer defeat while destroying itself from within. Russian forces shooting each other at Pokrovsk. Main offensive spearhead collapses in chaos. At the Pokrovsk cauldron, the level of fratricide within Russian ranks has spiraled beyond control to an unbelievable degree. Their drone teams continuously attack their own assault groups by mistake. This self-elimination phenomenon is no longer an isolated nighttime occurrence. It's happening in broad daylight, right before the eyes of multiple other units. According to Atesh reconnaissance within the 110th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, the root cause stems from chaotic infiltration tactics, lack of communication, and absence of clear identification markers. When Russian assault groups crawl close to positions, drone teams, under extreme stress and lacking coordination, cannot distinguish friendly forces from Ukrainian troops. The result: dozens of Russian soldiers killed by their own forces' fire. Pressure from superiors only intensifies the chaos. Russian command has set unrealistic objectives: capture Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad before the end of November. This leads to hastily throwing untrained recruits into battle, causing disorder to increase exponentially. Add to this communication breakdowns, overlapping orders, and a fragmented command system, all mixing into a nightmare for every attacking unit. Tensions have escalated to the point where sporadic shootings have erupted between assault infantry and drone teams. Ground troops accuse drone operators of working for Ukraine whenever friendly fire occurs, while drone teams believe assault groups deliberately abandon positions, making target identification impossible. Mutual distrust crushes combat morale, and drone teams fear retaliation to the point they dare not operate independently. The friendly fire situation has become one of the main reasons for the sharp decline in Russia's offensive pace at Pokrovsk. This was once their strongest assault direction, with dozens of attacks daily. But under mistaken fire, casualties surge and chaos spreads. This offensive spearhead is visibly running out of steam. As the encirclement campaign for Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad stalls, Russian command resorts to the final stage of desperation: destruction by bombing. Unable to break through, they return to familiar tactics: destroy what cannot be captured. Russia's initial objective was to seize a foothold in Mirnohrad to draw Ukraine into urban combat. allowing Russian drones to monitor from above. But the terrain here is completely open flatland, with no buildings for concealment, making every Russian assault fully exposed to Ukraine's precise firepower. The small group infiltration tactics with 1 to 3 person teams that proved effective in Pokrovsk became disasters at Mirnohrad. This area has the densest concentration of Ukrainian drones across the entire front. Through long-range observation and precise fire adjustment, Ukrainian units maintain complete initiative. Rare foggy days or bad weather become extremely valuable opportunities for Russian attacks, but also when Ukraine safely rotates troops and resupplies. When rain turns soil to mud, Russian armored vehicles immediately bog down, becoming perfect targets for Ukrainian FPVs. Even electronic warfare no longer gives Russia an advantage. Ukraine has deployed fiber-optic guided drones, completely neutralizing jamming capabilities. Pokrovsk becomes a death zone. Every Russian unit advancing is wiped out. Soldiers have no choice but to desert to survive. The Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad line is becoming the focal point of Russian tactical collapse. In just 24 hours, invading forces lost 192 soldiers, 4 tanks, and 8 armored vehicles. Ukrainian UAVs completely dominate the skies, transforming the entire terrain into a true death zone, where every Russian advance is detected, locked, and eliminated almost instantly. In this context, many Russian soldiers understand the only choice to preserve their lives is to flee. The Atesh partisan movement describes the atmosphere at Pokrovsk as an extended nightmare. Wounded and dead Russian soldiers pile up on roads, but cannot be evacuated to the rear. Supply is paralyzed, troop rotation chaotic, units forced to fight in conditions of depleted ammunition and morale. The 39th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade still attempts to organize attacks, but every position they reach constantly changes hands, with advance speed nearly hitting rock bottom. After Ukraine struck Russian command posts and UAV concentration points, numerous soldiers went missing. Some were eliminated, but many are suspected of deserting to avoid the same fate. Organizational disintegration causes panic among Russian commanders, while troops are suspicious, terrified, and severely demoralized. Atesh reports the number of Russian soldiers attempting contact to surrender or provide information is increasing daily. President Zelensky emphasized Russia has completely failed in its timeline objectives at Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. By November 15th, the milestone Putin once trumpeted, all Russia has is the stark truth. No progress achieved whatsoever. On the ground, Ukrainian forces collapsed the strategic road segment between Selidove and Pokrovsk, completely blocking the supply route for Russian light armored vehicles. Defense forces continue to shred enemy logistics, making all efforts to support the front line hopeless. Videos sent home by Vladimir Dulyaninov, a platoon commander with the 6th Guards Tank Regiment, have become damning testimony about the chaos, inhumanity, and brutality within the Russian military at Pokrovsk. Dulyaninov recounts continuously losing men due to reckless orders from superiors. His platoon was pushed into meat grinder missions, where command knew survival chances were near zero, but still forced soldiers to charge forward. They were abandoned without supplies, ammunition, or fire support, yet still had to attack in desperation. In one horrifying order, superiors demanded he personally execute 5 soldiers in his platoon before the assault. He refused and tried to convince them to advance together for any hope of survival, but all died. In another battle, with 3 artillery shards embedded in his body, Dulyaninov had to crawl for 6 days in temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. For 4 consecutive days, he called for supply support, but received no response. He and his comrades had to eat tree bark, leaves, and wild apples to barely survive. When discovered by another unit, his own regiment had reported him missing, organizing no rescue, as if they wanted to abandon him to death. He describes the infiltration tactics Russian commanders employ, sending 5 men with only 1 ration for 3 days and a few ammunition belts, crossing mines, barbed wire, and enemy fire. Upon arrival, they must attack without any supporting fire, all only to be wiped out by Ukrainian UAVs, snipers, and machine guns within minutes. Dulyaninov admits, "It's scarier than Bakhmut. It feels like everyone is sent to die." The horror comes not just from the enemy, but from Russian command itself. Dulyaninov recounts the 90th Tank Division commander ordering a ruined village captured before noon, or else facing assignment to assault teams. The threat forced the regimental colonel to gather both wounded and healthy soldiers, throwing everyone into a hopeless attack, resulting in nearly total casualties. Soldiers are forced to pay company funds of 150,000 to 200,000 rubles per person. Before each mission, they must surrender bank cards and pins. If they return, belongings are completely looted. If killed, accounts are drained to the last penny. Those intending to report are assassinated on orders from an officer nicknamed Sumrak, with an executioner named Zayats. Dulyanov concludes he believes God sees everything, and corrupt commanders will pay the price. But the greatest irony is he's appealing to the very system that produced these inhumane individuals. The system grinding Russian soldiers to pieces right at Pokrovsk. Ukraine destroys 4 S-400 launchers, strikes straight to the heart of southern Russia's air defense. Ukraine's attack on Novorossiysk marked a critical turning point in the strategy to break Russia's long-range air defense capabilities. With unprecedented coordination between SBU, GUR, SSO Special Forces, and Ukrainian border guards, the campaign was not only symbolic, but inflicted serious actual losses on Moscow's defense capacity. Ukrainian sources confirmed that SBU's Alpha unit destroyed 4 S-400 Triumph launchers at Novorossiysk, one of the crucial air defense anchors protecting the entire Black Sea coastal region. Along with this, 2 critically important radars, the 96N6 long-range surveillance and 92N6 fire control and target designation, were also eliminated. Having lost both eyes and ears, the S-400 in this area was immediately completely neutralized. Initial estimates suggest the entire compound housed approximately 12 launchers. This means most of them suffered direct or indirect impact from shockwaves and debris following the precision FP-1 UAV strike waves. This is one of the rare instances Ukraine has shattered an S-400 complex deep in Russian rear areas, right at what seemed an impenetrable location. Satellite imagery released after the attack shows 4 launchers and 2 primary radars were completely destroyed. Experts also detected 2 decoy models, a familiar Russian tactic to deceive UAVs, but this time completely useless against FP-1's precise target detection capability. Before the strike, the area recorded 7 launchers, including 2 decoys. After the attack, only 3 launchers appear in imagery. Their condition cannot be clearly determined, but the severity of losses is undeniable. Losing the 92N6 radar means the entire S-400 system here no longer has combat capability. No detection, no tracking, no fire control, becoming a useless steel position lying in the middle of a strategic coastal zone. Parallel to eliminating the S-400, satellite imagery also shows the Sheskaris oil port area, Russia's largest oil transshipment hub in the Black Sea, severely damaged. Multiple technological pipelines, measurement systems, quality control, and oil flow systems suffered heavy damage, essentially paralyzing the port long-term. Novorossiysk is a critical oil export node, contributing to sustaining Moscow's massive war revenue. When this port is neutralized, along with the air defense system protecting it, Ukraine not only destroys military power, but strikes directly at the cash flow feeding Russia's war machine. Concurrent with the Novorossiysk attack, a Nebo-U long-range surveillance radar in Crimea was also destroyed. This reveals a larger strategy. Ukraine is systematically neutralizing Russia's command, control, air defense logistics network, rather than just hitting isolated targets. This is how Ukraine erodes Russia's war-sustaining capability from its roots. Armed Ukrainian robot holds trench for over a month. Quantum leap in automated warfare. Ukraine just recorded a remarkable breakthrough on the battlefield. A ground robot system carrying heavy weapons completely replaced infantry, holding a strategic position for over 6 weeks and continuously preventing all Russian breakthrough attempts. This isn't just a technical improvement. It's a sign that new forms of warfare are gradually shaping the future of combat. This robot belongs to the NC-1 Assault UGV unit, remotely operated by a commander with the call sign Makar. He describes the robot's mission at a critical intersection where Russia repeatedly attempted advances but was repelled. It operated continuously for a month and a half. The robot's firepower prevented Russian forces from moving, Makar affirms. Each morning, the control team activates the robot from a safe position, then guides it to the front line. From there, the robot conducts reconnaissance, monitors enemy movements, suppresses fire, and blocks all infiltration attempts. Russia tried multiple times to destroy the robot, but failed, testament to the system's durability and effectiveness. The platform used is DevDroid's Droid TW-12.7, a robot carrying an M2 Browning 12.7mm machine gun, designed to fight in environments where humans could barely survive direct assault. This system was officially deployed by Ukraine's Ministry of Defense in late 2024 and is now showing value far exceeding expectations. Ukrainian officers assess that the next generation of robots will not only hold defensive lines, but also participate in attacks, opening an entirely new approach to infantry warfare in the future. Beyond defense, Ukraine recorded another achievement. The kamikaze ground robot K2 was used for the first time to eliminate Russian soldiers in a direct attack mission. This milestone was confirmed by the K2 Brigade and 20th Regiment on November 15th, marking an important step in automated warfare. Previously, K2 robots only performed transport, supply, and casualty evacuation missions. But the new deployment transformed them into true lethal weapons. A secret control team maneuvered the robot close to a group of 3 Russian soldiers, then detonated the explosive charge mounted on its body. One Russian soldier was killed instantly, another wounded, and the third eliminated by a Ukrainian FPV UAV just seconds later. Russia collapses at Kupiansk. Encirclement exists only in Putin's rhetoric. On the ground, Ukraine is sweeping neighborhood by neighborhood. The Kupiansk battlefield is exposing a truth the Kremlin doesn't want to acknowledge. Russia cannot encircle the city. On the contrary, they are gradually losing control. Viktor Trehubov, head of communications for Ukraine's Joint Operational Group, confirms Putin's claim of complete encirclement of Kupiansk has long been merely an empty slogan. Reality on the battlefield shows Russia only infiltrated a few northern peripheral districts, but was immediately counterattacked and repelled. Heavy personnel losses prevent them from holding any stable positions. Ukraine hasn't achieved absolute victory, but counteroffensive and sweeping operations continue daily, step by step, shrinking Russia's influence in the city. Kupiansk is currently a logistics battlefield, proving brutal for both sides. But the major difference lies in organization and force-sustaining capability. Ukraine still maintains stable supply and forces, while Russian soldiers inside the city are cut off from logistics lines. Latest estimates show fewer than 50 Russian soldiers remain holed up in Kupiansk, divided into scattered groups unable to support each other. Stalled on the ground, Russia turns to familiar tactics: propaganda videos. Some infantry groups are ordered to film flag-raising scenes, play-acting area control, and Russia even drops flags from drones onto hidden soldier groups to film according to victory scripts. But these performances are completely useless before reality. Most of Kupiansk remains under Ukrainian control. Russian soldiers in the north are merely small, isolated groups, becoming ideal targets for reconnaissance UAVs. The very propaganda videos Russia produces inadvertently help Ukraine easily pinpoint their locations. Ukraine's message to Russian soldiers is equally pragmatic. Want to live? Choose the white flag. Faced with this reality, Colonel Viktor Baranets, veteran military writer for Komsomolskaya Pravda and strong invasion supporter, publicly criticized Russia's propaganda machine. A Kremlin loyalist like Baranets had to admit he'd grown utterly exhausted with stories of grand encirclements, cauldrons, total encirclement that Putin, Gerasimov, and Z channels have been inflating for months. Baranets stated bluntly, 18 months have passed without Russian forces creating any encirclement whatsoever. Yet Kremlin-friendly media continue fabricating that Ukraine is trapped in the cauldron. He compared the entire propaganda system to a nest of snakes coiling around each other with lies, making Russian society live in delusion, then disappointment when reality doesn't match the advertising. This denunciation reflects something more frightening: deep fractures right within those who once supported the war. When even Baranets, born in 1946, who once praised the Russian military, must speak out, it shows exhaustion has spread even to the Kremlin-aligned elite.